Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Leo Casey. I am Executive Director of the Albert Schenker Institute, which, together with the American Federation of Teachers, is sponsoring this afternoon's forum. It is the first of a series of forums that we will be doing throughout this academic year. The second Wednesday of every month, we will have a different forum. The topics that we are working on right now are listed on the handout that you picked up on your way in. But I will tell you that the next one, which will be October 9th, will be held in the AFT building right near Capitol Hill. And it will be on the topic of civic purposes of education and the Common Core. And we have 4 people confirmed with a possible mystery guest if we get a 5th confirmation. And those 4 people are Chester Finn from Fordham, Kathy Swan, who was the lead author of the C3 Common Core standards, Russ Weiner from the Aspen Institute, and some guy named Leo Casey.
Is that the mystery again?
And the other thing I want to tell you, just as a housekeeping matter once we get started, is that the different presenters would like to see each other's presentations, and the only way they're going to be able to do that is to sit in the audience. So when they all get up and leave, it's not because they're storming out on each other, it's because they're actually moving to a place where they will be able to see the presentations. With that, I would like to introduce our moderator for the forum today. She is Randi Weingarten, who is president of the American Federation of Teachers and of the Albert Schenker Institute, and was once my co-teacher in a classroom in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. Randi?
What he doesn't tell you was he was my mentor, and that I would never have been a successful classroom teacher, high school classroom teacher, but for Leo Casey. And we had a very good time teaching the AP government class and the We the People competition. But he is one of the finest secondary school teachers I know in the country, and I know many, many fine ones, and Leo was one of the finest. I do want to do a couple of things very quickly. Number one, it is 9/11, 12 years after what happened both in Pennsylvania, in New York City, and in Washington, D.C. And I don't think that today should go without just noting that 9/11 is pretty important both in Chilean history as well as in American history. And so I just want to honor all of those fighters for justice and for freedom and democracy. Number two, I want to thank the staff of the, you can't hear me? Is that better? I've had my coffee now. I want to thank the Leo Casey, who is the not so new director anymore of the Schenker Institute, and the Schenker Institute staff for the planning of this really important forum. And also to say that this is going to become one of a series of the kind of conversations that ought to be happening in Washington in terms of how to really look at educational policy from, frankly, lots of different views, but from the vantage point of a progressive viewpoint about education and what is actually really happening bottom up, as opposed to simply what I've seen, and excuse me for saying it, more and more and more of a disconnect between where the policymakers are and where schools actually are. And so that's what Leo and the Shanker Institute and ultimately AFT is trying to do with these series, and I'm just really very, very, very excited that Shanker has conceived in the true way that Al Shanker would have wanted to do this kind of series going forward. What I get to do is to introduce our speakers and to tell you that each of them will speak for pretty much around 10 to 15 minutes. And after they speak, they have already been told that I will ask them a couple of questions that they know so that they've prepared the answers to those questions as well. I'm not going to tell you the questions yet because you'll have to stay awake and listen to the speakers who, frankly, actually know more about this subject from all sides than pretty much anyone else I know. And the subject, as you know, is the use of value-added and other test-based measures of performance in teacher evaluation. And I think that what you'll hear shortly is not what people were saying about value-add a year or two ago, but really what is going on right now and whether or not this methodology is ready for prime time, or whether it should be jettisoned, or whether it should be, changed or whatnot. But that's really the conversation that's about to happen. So the first speaker is my colleague to the left and a dear friend.
That's the order.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Ixnay on the first speaker that way. The first speaker is my colleague to the right, who I have not known as long as I've known Leo and Linda, and that's Doug Harris, who is the Associate Professor of Economics and Endowed Chair of Public Education at Tulane University, and the Director of the New Orleans Education Research Alliance, and has done, as many of you know, a very extensive review of value add in his book, Value Added Measures in Education. I can tell you a bunch of other things about Doug as well, but let me just simply say he's one of the top 10 most influential economists studying education. After Doug will be Tom. I got this right now? And Tom Kane is on the panel, he is to my far left. And I won't go further than that. And Tom is also someone who is very well versed in both education and economics. He's a professor of education and economics at Harvard Graduate School of Education. He is the faculty director of Harvard Center for Education Policy Research. He has been, as many of you know, the deputy director in the K-12 team of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations, and he is basically, in my judgment, the kind of intellectual gravitas of the Gates Foundation's measures of effective teaching. His work has influenced many, many, many people over the course of time, and I am delighted that he is on this panel and will be speaking about his current views of value add. And the last person that I want to introduce is the person I was going to introduce at first and who will be speaking last as opposed to first. And that is Linda Darling-Hammond, who is the Charles E. Dukeman, is that how you pronounce it? Thank you. Professor of Education at Stanford. She's also the co-director of the Stanford Center for Opportunity Policy in Education. And as many of you know, just like with Doug and with Tom, Linda has served in many, many different positions, including as the policy director for the Obama campaign in 2007 and 2008, and many other committees and commissions, and done much writing on how you really ensure equity and professionalism in public K-12 education. And with that, I'll turn it over to Doug.